Okay, we are in our Saving on RDS webinar. Let's give people a few minutes to join. Let's see, I'm checking LinkedIn. Let's see, LinkedIn is not recording is on yet. It takes a few minutes for all the streams to get started and then sync up so that way people can ask questions. How's it going today?
Going good, Stephen. Going good. Been busy with our customers. Yeah, we've had some new finders into the product recently, and people are kind of finding their way without those. Got some customers that are having great success with automating fixers, which is it's great to see. It's what the product's designed for. So it's really good to see people using it as it's intended.
Awesome. I see people are joining on LinkedIn, on StreamYard, on our Twitch channel, Facebook, and everywhere else good content is shown. Well, I think we should jump in. There's a lot to RDS, so we're going to co-present this and see how it goes. So interestingly, we presented this to a customer fairly recently. We did a very tailored one to their setup, but RDS, of course, is general for everyone. So why don't we just kind of level set on first on what CloudFix is and who we are. So my name is Stephen Barr. I'm Chief Evangelist at CloudFix. Bill?
Bill Gleeson, I guess Chief Customer Officer here at CloudFix. I've been working with our customers for 3.5 years, helping them save money on AWS.
Well, awesome. Well, today we're talking about saving on RDS. Now, of course, we're going to be mentioning CloudFix because that is our product. But the savings techniques that we talk about, there's no secret sauce, secret formulas that we have. We've done the automation, but all the things that we say, you can either automate it yourself or use CloudFix, of course. So either one. The important thing is that you can save on RDS. Level setting, RDS, relational database service. This is MySQL, Postgres, all these different database engines, their own Aurora, which could be compatible with different database engines. There's high availability setups. There's multi-AZ, which we're going to get into in the show. Is multi-AZ a good idea? So we'll get into that in the show. Automated backups. There's lots of great features with RDS in general. So I want to start out with a pop quiz for the audience. Okay, well, here's all the list of our RDS Finder fixers. You see, we classify Finder fixers as easy, medium, and advanced. I think that's a bit of a misnomer. What do you think, Bill? I think what would you call it? I think in terms of, rather than advanced.
Yeah, I think it's anything that requires downtime. So yeah, we are rethinking whether to change those category names. As you said, it can be a little bit off-putting. But yeah, I mean, typically our RDS Finder fixers, they sit in the advanced section, as you say, because it generally requires, there's potentially downtime, there's potentially reprovisioning an RDS server. It's not trivial work most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. And also we've got some reservation related ones in the best practice section. So whether you're buying new reservations, extending existing ones, we give some advice on that. As we just say, it's in a maintenance window. I think there's one that you can do immediately. Let's have a look. First of all, pop quiz. What is the average customer spend on RDS? I was surprised at this one. Let's see, anyone in the audience care to put in the comments what your guess as to the average customer spend on RDS is out of these three? I'll give it another couple of seconds to people to catch up. Sometimes the streams are delayed a few seconds. So by the time you see this, it's been 10 seconds already. So put in your best guess. What's the average customer spend on RDS? Okay, it is 12.7%. Bill, you gave me that statistic the other day, which for me, to be honest, I thought was a bit low. What was it? What you were expecting?
It was. I mean, that's across all of our customers. So we cover customers from single account shops all the way to some of the biggest organizations on the planet. So we think that it's a fairly the numbers accurate representation of what RDS is. But you mentioned we had this webinar with one of our larger customers a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, they were 25%. So and they all put their hands up and said 25%, and then we had to say, actually no. So yeah, it does vary, but it surprised me, because it's as we go through the finders, it's easy to spend money here on this service.
And I think database as a whole, so if you include not just RDS, but Dynamo, Neptune, DocumentDB, all of those as a whole would be about 25%. And also maybe we've helped our customers save so much that our proportion is lower, because there's some real savings to be had with RDS. Maybe more so even than say, I don't know, OpenSearch. Like there is a lot of real savings to be had here. Okay, so let's jump into our first one, RDS delete idle clusters. So this one is, like the first two is kind of like a turn the lights off after you're done kind of cluster. Delete idle clusters, we define network throughput as 0 and the maximum number of database connections as less than 1 for 31 days. Our automation will do this, snapshot the cluster, and then stop the cluster. So we found, like in larger enterprises, that people have some pretty substantial clusters that they've just kind of forgotten about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a signal when we start working with a customer for the first time, and this finder pops up, and either the account names or the instances have the word kind of QA, test, dev, backup, and so on in their titles. It's a giveaway that these things have, as you said, they've been spun up. They occasionally will match what was intended for production or what's in production, so they'll be expensive. But yeah, they're not being used, so they can be switched off. As you mentioned, we take a snapshot. Our automation rather takes a snapshot. It respects like delete protection and things like that. So we're very thoughtful about the process of identifying and remediating this.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, we could see things pop up for customers where it's like, oh, that project, I thought we had turned that off ages ago, right? And it's just things that right when you start, that's where the biggest savings initially come in, because it's this idle stuff, right? Stuff that you just forgot and had been part of that recurring bill, and you get used to it. And
the costs have climbed at some point, and that's the kind of low water mark that you expect these days. And yeah, it's RDS. I'm not looking into that. Those database guys know what they're doing.
Yeah, and this is like the day-to-day equivalent of you turned on Hulu Plus to watch that one movie 8 months ago and totally forgot, and now that one movie has cost you $80, right? This is the corporate cloud equivalent of that. So we scan for idle clusters. It'll snapshot the clusters, stop them. One thing I want to say about this one, it still takes 31 days to kick in. And so once you've got everything automated, this is a fairly simple automation to write, and you can make it more aggressive in terms of timing. Like you can have it that shuts off after 7 days if you wanted to, or even shuts off. Maybe you only work Monday through Friday in one time zone. You can shut it off. RDS clusters, you want to time how long it takes to restore, but 500 gigabyte cluster will restore in about half an hour. So if you can schedule it to Monday at 5 a.m., turn itself back on, you can still save 2/7 of your bill. So definitely look into that in general. These ones are for the very long idle ones. Anything else to say about this one before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, no, we have a lot to cover, so let's keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next one. This one is coming out. This is a sneak preview. Delete Aurora read replicas. So this is where you have a database that maybe was heavy read, but it wasn't. And a lot of this comes from, I think, it's really fun to write the scale up automation, but people often don't write the inverse of that, right? When it scales down to shut down these read replicas. So maybe you have some code that says, okay, the database is getting bigger, spin up more read replicas, but then you don't have the inverse of, okay, traffic's dying down, let's turn off the read replicas. Read replicas, they use shared storage, so you're not paying for extra storage, but you are paying for extra instances. And these are the highly marked up RDS instances. So we can scan for those and make sure that they get deleted if they're not being used. Here's all of the validations that we use, which I want to say, it's when you are doing automation with your cloud in general, you often want to have multiple definitions for the same thing, right? So like with idle, we looked at network connections and data throughput, and maybe look at the cur for the price of data. You want to have multiple definitions. And so this is all the things that we look for read replicas. Now, this one is still fairly new. I don't think we've seen the average savings from this yet, have we?
No, it's not in production yet. I think it's just in our preview environment. So looking forward to getting it out there in the wild. I don't think our customers will need to do anything for this to work. I think the existing permissions in the Finder roles will be sufficient.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's see. Aurora read. Okay, so that is Aurora read replicas. Have a look. That is coming out. This is kind of how we calculate thresholds. Basically, we say, if your normal instance could have handled it, we could project what your CPU usage would have been if you turn off the instance and it looks like you still have room, then we can turn off that read replica. This is the summary of the cost. Aurora read replicas, you're paying basically an extra instance per read replica per hour. So if you can save that, the better. Okay, so those were our redundant resource ones. Let's go into the more configuration type of ones. Okay, this part is going to be kind of redundant, but that's okay. We're dealing with redundancy here. So idle, over-provisioned, we want to make sure that we have clear definitions for those. That's what it says by validate with more than one source. We say use tags and automation. And this last one is take the win. And what I mean by that is sometimes it's easy to daydream about a much more complicated thing. Like, okay, we're going to do a full serverless rewrite. We're going to move it all to Dynamo, and we're going to save all this money later. So don't worry about it now. But you can still take the win right now for RDS. You can still get rid of that idle cluster and do that Dynamo rewrite next year or next quarter or whatever. But take the easy wins now because they're easy. And a lot of these like extra read replicas, idle resources, over provision, they're easy. Just take the win now and then give yourself some headroom. Also wanted to talk about, we're going to talk a lot about cur queries. Cur is the cost and usage report for AWS. And you can see all the resources and all your accounts with a cur query. So we like to advocate for using that. It's great for identifying metered services. So if you ever have a service that has a cost where you're paying a certain amount just for it being there, and then another amount based on usage, like data transfer or storage, a good pattern to look for is this. The fixed cost is something, but the metered amount is zero. And a lot of our Finder fixers, we look for that type of pattern. Like idle VPCs, right? You're paying for the existence of the VPC and you're paying for the transfer fee.
Yeah, the NAT gateways is hourly charges. Anything with an hourly charge and where the traffic is zero. Those things, like they're kind of trivial. They cost like, I don't know, $30 a month or whatever it is. But we've got customers that have got thousands of these things laying around. So the principle is completely sound. So as we move to RDS, that's how we look for things.
Absolutely. We've got a really good guide to the cur here. You can scan this QR code. Also just go to cloudfix.com/blog and search for a cost and usage report. And then also one of our friends of the show, Steph Gooch, she is a good cur master. She's challenged me on her live stream live. Okay, write a cur query that does this. Ready, go. And I'm like, I think you're better than me. But she can do that. So check out her live stream. She's got the keys to AWS optimization. She's a good friend of ours. So have a look at her show as well. Okay, RDS end of life. So this is a really big one. Bill, what have you seen in terms of customers dealing with RDS end of life and getting automatically enrolled in these support contracts?
Yeah, so for a start, this comes as a surprise for a lot of people. Okay, or certainly came as a surprise. This thing, extended support's been around for, I think, almost 2 years now at this stage. And yeah, what it means is that as your database engine exits, community support, there's a AWS support for it as well. And once those periods are finished, you move into what AWS euphemistically call extended support, where they now charge you for running these older versions of database engine. So it's we'd kind of heard about it before it happened. So we were in place with this finder I think almost immediately once the announcement was public. So we now are looking for these databases out there. Our customers have saved a ton of money through CloudFix with this finder.
Yeah, this is a big one. It doubles your support cost, right? It's not a gradual. It's just on a certain day. If you're on this old version by this day, it doubles. And why does this cost so much? I wanted to talk about this. This is kind of just an interesting tech tidbit in general. There's this principle called Hiram's Law, which says that if you have a public-facing thing, even if there's a bug, it says all observable behaviors of your system will be depended on by somebody. And so the reason why extended support is expensive is that they have to deal with, backporting all of the security fixes because it can't be insecure. And so a new security issue that shows up, they have to fix that, but then they still have to make sure that the system behaves exactly as it did before, right? And so say if there is, and that's a tricky balance to get right because a lot of security issues exploit bugs. And so you have to fix the bug, but keep the behavior, and there's a smaller and smaller and smaller pool of people paying into this. This is an XKCD comic. It's just kind of showing the humorous nature of people can depend on anything, right? Even like a simple thing like a 0 versus not a number versus null. Those are different things. And you want to make sure that those are consistent across the thing. So that's why this extended support is so expensive. We can't change it for you, but we can wave this big red flag and say, hey, this big cost explosion is about to happen. Bill, we also have some advice on how you can, how big of a problem is this going to be? How can you quantify that?
Yeah, well, quite aside from the cost, what prevents people from kind of acting on this is that you know what we're relying on this old engine because the code isn't backwards compatible or whatever. So we recognized that early on with our customers and also with our own internal testing. And we built a tool that's available to CloudFix customers that will scan the database access logs and look for patterns in queries and things like that. It'll then identify it'll identify whether the database can be migrated to a newer version without issue, or if not, it will identify queries that are not backwards compatible and also suggest what those queries should be changed to in code so that in order that the database can be migrated. So that's something really, really useful to our customers.
Got it. Okay, so we can actually scan the prompts that are being used and figure out exactly, what is the breaking change. Maybe it's a syntax thing, and highlight view. And maybe it's an old SQL module and it's not worth doing this, and it's worth paying the support costs. Or maybe it's just one prompt that only gets run once a month, and you can just fix it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the tool just runs, it gathers up the database logs, analyzes them, and so it'll pick up batch queries that happen once a month or once a quarter if you let it run long enough. All the while, the extended support charges are ticking over like a taxi meter.
Awesome. All right, well, let's go on to the next one. This is RDS EOL. We have a good blog post on it. Check out Query Lens. Ask us about that. Send us a DM, either me or Bill or the official CloudFix LinkedIn or any of the official CloudFix channels, and we will happily chat with you about that. Okay, next one, RDS optimized storage. These are two different fixtures kind of in one. There's a resize storage, which downsizes over provisioned volumes. RDS basically uses EBS in the background, and you can make a giant volume that you're not using all of it. The other one is optimizing provisioned IOPS. So this is if you have an IO1 backed RDS, maybe you don't need to use IO1. So first of all, resize storage. In terms of customers, I think we've seen this is like one of those surprisingly. I don't know. What do you think about this one? Have customers seen some value out of this?
Yeah, it tends to be. People will often vastly overestimate what their storage requirements are. They'll just put in a terabyte and kind of forget about it, thinking that the cost is kind of rolled into RDS generally, rather than being a separate line item. So we monitor that. We look for patterns. Is your data growing steadily? Is it being trimmed? Is it static? And all that feeds into the logic of the recommendation that we emit.
I think what our typical algorithm is for resizing is we look at the period of growth over the last 30 days, forecast that out 30 days into the future, and then resize it so that you have a 10% headroom above that projected 30-day growth. But the good thing is this optimization is running every week, right? So it's not like saying, oh gosh, in 60 days I'll be out of space. It's saying, oh, in 30 days I can resize it again. And I think it's like this psychological thing. Like we forget how flexible the cloud actually is, right? Like we still think about it like we're buying a car and we're stuck with it for the next couple of years. Whereas no, you could imagine if you could change your car from a Formula One car to a minivan to a off-road vehicle, like in the push of a button. Like that would be cool. And basically the cloud gives you that.
Change it back once you've figured out what that's costing you.
Yes, change it into a bicycle. So cloud can do that for you. Next one is so we talked about resize storage. It's the IO1 that I wanted to talk to, the IOPS. What we found is that often people provision IO1. Speaking of Formula One cars, they provision IO1, and then looking at their load, it's actually something that GP3 could have handled. Except for the latency, GP3 can't match that. But for dev and test, you're better off just, unless you really want to test out that latency, it's better off just having GP3.
Yeah. There's your Formula One part again.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be paying Formula One prices unless you need Formula One performance. It is a lot more expensive. And what we do is we look at, here's an example, $430 a month versus $1,015 a month for the exact same specs, exact same throughput, exact same IOP, same size. It's just slightly different on the latency side. And look at the durability is also slightly lower. But again, especially if it's dev or test, you don't need to be paying for that level of durability. And it's kind of, when you're making a template, especially if you're getting AI to write your CloudFormation, you got to check if it's like IO1 in there.
Yeah. It's funny you mention AI because obviously that's a new way of sizing architecture or provisioning or whatever. I think that a lot of this comes from kind of older legacy methods of looking at architecture that, hey, we just got to buy the best we can get right now and go with it. But to your earlier point, hey, start with this, then move to provisioning or switch your provisioning down if it turns out that you're actually going nowhere near it. The old kind of mentality of just buying the best server that you could get and the best network gear and all that kind of thing, it completely goes away.
Yeah, and you're not stuck with this decision. You can change the class of an EBS volume in place without a restart, which still boggles my mind that you can do that. That's some incredible engineering work. I mean, you can turn a GP3 into an IO2 and back without a restart, in place, live. That's a very well-tested workflow. So these green dots that are here, where either IO1 or IO2 could serve the workload, might as well pay the lower price. Okay, so that is our RDS optimized storage finder fixer. Okay, we have another one, which is retype to serverless. Now, this is an Aurora. We're talking about Aurora, Aurora serverless. What we do is we look at 30 days of CloudWatch metrics. And this is this classic provisioned versus serverless trade-off. Now, I think sometimes we get this provisioned capacity because, again, we're optimistic as developers. We say, oh, my project is going to be so busy. I'm going to need this great server. And it turns out maybe it gets sporadic usage. Or maybe it gets a lot of usage once in a while. It's not predictable. So what have we seen in terms of people wanting to do retype to serverless? I think there's a lot on the table with this one.
Yeah, it's we haven't seen a ginormous uptake here yet because I think it's a big mental jump for a lot of people, this one. I think some of the more recent changes in the serverless offering will make it a little bit more attractive in that it's become, I think, has it become actually serverless yet? I'm not sure.
So let's have a look at this. When it first came out, it was not scaled to zero. Now this was animated by one of the classic Princess Bride. You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. When they first came out with this serverless Aurora, it wasn't scaled to zero. It scaled to half an ACU. So if you were a solo developer and you were used to serverless, like a Lambda function, where it wouldn't cost you anything unless it was called, that's not how Aurora serverless was. But they fixed that late last year.
Yeah, I think that was a lot of the initial pushback that we saw across the customers. Was that, look, hey, this thing isn't really what it should be. So yeah, I think maybe it's time we kind of push that again, and really kind of get people moving. I mean, this is how the cloud is supposed to be. These types of higher order services.
Yeah, so check out our RDS retype to serverless. I think maybe we should show this in the UI just to introduce the CloudFix UI a bit. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. You've got access there.
Yeah, let's. I want to show off the CloudFix UI for a second. Let's reshuffle this around, and we need to move our heads out of the way here. Give me 1 second.
Duck, do I?
Let's. Here we go. Okay.
There you go.
This is the CloudFix UI. Let's. So you can see in our best performed in a maintenance window section, we've got RDS retype IO optimize, RDS optimize storage, RDS optimize instances, RDS retyped serverless. So here's one where for this particular account, we see that there is $3,000 worth of savings that can be had. Now this takes longer than my actual CloudFix because I've got an anonymizing server so we can show it to everyone. But here's one. So it's saying, okay, here's a light CI import. It's costing $596, has a potential savings of $236 per year. And they have all of these different ones. So
cut your cost in half. It's beautiful.
Yeah. You can create a Jira ticket right from here. You can look at the details of the report. You can get a lot of information about which one it is. It's giving the justification. Okay, the maximum CPU analysis is this percentage, maximum of 20 connections. And so it can do all that math for you and say, okay, this is that serverless versus provisioned trade-off that we're always talking about here. It'll do all that math for you, and you can create a ticket to get this done. Okay, so that is the CloudFix UI for this particular one. And just showing in general, look, some of these in this particular account are really big. Like the EOL, there's $50,000 for this particular account. $50,000 of savings that can be had if they updated certain SQL versions. Any other ones in here? Optimized instances, we're going to talk about that one in a second. $40,000 on the table for that one. Single AZ. Let's jump back into the presentation, put that online, and move our heads there. There we go. Okay. Oh, and this is also interesting. The costs are done via simulation. So we actually do this in certain versions of Aurora. There's actually a cost to turning on, turning off. And so we will actually look at exactly what that would have cost if you were serverless and calculate a very specific savings calculation for you. It's very useful. Okay, retype. Okay, let me go back to this. There's one slide I think we had for the optimized instances. Here we go. RDS optimized instances. This is like a compute optimizer.
Yep.
Now, this is actually a really interesting story. The compute optimizer team actually came and asked us some questions because we had this before they did, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Bill, what's the uptake on the optimized instances?
Yeah, people love this one. Again, it's the same story, and at the risk of repeating myself, it's people they've spec these things, maybe using metrics from on-prem or whatever. But it turns out that when you run these things in the cloud, the CPU, when looked at, given the kind of helicopter view, you're looking at these things over a period of 60, 90 days. It's the utilization is not where it was expected to be at. These things are very, very performant. So you don't need the world's largest database to kind of run your shopping list app or whatever it is you guys have out there. I'm sure it's a lot more complex than that. But we're seeing huge take up. That 16x. Instance sizes are being recommended to go down to X large or 2x large. So we give a couple of recommendations. So here's the absolute maximum you could save and still be safe. And here's a couple of intermediates as well.
And then, like you said, we're always very careful. This will not impact performance. Right? Obviously, we can't predict the future. If you have a huge surge in demand in 1 second, that will impact performance, but that will impact performances anyway. For the 99.9th percentile, it will not impact performance. We do analyze as much historical data as we can, plus leveraging compute optimizer. That team is very sharp, and they've got access to all the RDS instances in the world. So they understand these performance characteristics. And it's also the chance to look at Graviton, right? If you have a managed database, what do you care what CPU it's running? Graviton's a great chance to save on there.
Yep.
Okay, retype IO optimize. This is interesting. This is another, basically a contractual one. So RDS, you can pay for IO optimized pricing for databases that are transferring more data than normal. It looks at, so this is basically just a financial calculation of what would it have been under this old model. Now, this is one of those ones where you really get the benefit of the fact that we've already done this, because you don't want to re-implement Amazon's pricing models yourself. So, I don't know, how is have we seen a lot of gains on this one, or is this?
I think it's only recently gone into the product, this one. So I'm just looking through my notes. I don't have a huge amount of uptake on this one yet, but it is pretty new. There is, as you say, there's a lot of math behind this one. So I think people are just wanting to kind of see how these recommendations settle.
Actually, I'm looking at the one that's our internally, and I can see that they've executed on all the potential ones. So they've saved 12,000 just on this already, and there's none left on the board. So that's great, and because this is just contractual, it doesn't impact performance at all. It's literally just switching the pricing model. So this one should be a very simple one, straightforward. If you see this in CloudFix, turn this on. If you're not a CloudFix customer, well, you should be, but if you just want to implement this calculation yourself, that's a good exercise to do, and you can make sure that you can pay the best rate.
Yeah. No, I mean we do break it down. What are the the price before upgrade and the price after upgrade for the instance cost, the storage cost, and the the IO cost as well. So the calculations are made on a kind of case-by-case basis and laid out there. So it'd be great to kind of get adoption of this kind of a little bit more pushed out.
Yeah, it's it can be done automatically. The change happens instantly, and you can always change it back if your usage patterns change. This reminds me of like picking a phone plan. Remember, especially like when they first came out, like, wait, am I going to make calls after 7? Is it nice in weekends? How many texts do I send? And then like T-Mobile had one for a while, which is like your closest 5 family members was a different rate.
That's
it's
right.
all
it is. It's got all the different pricing dimensions. Quick question, Stephen. You might know the answer without looking up. Can you change back immediately, or is there a minimum time period?
No, you could do this immediately. So there's literally a apply immediately flag on this. I think there's a limit on how often you can change it back, but you can apply this immediately.
Yeah. I mean, it's not something you're going to be doing for fun. So but yeah, I mean, CloudFix will, it'll always be looking at the instances. So yeah, we'll be able to recommend the switchback as well.
Awesome. All right, let's go on to this one. Is interesting. Retype single AZ. I put this one. This is kind of funny. Buy 1 beer for the price of 2 and receive a second beer absolutely free. I put this because this is what RDS single AZ. This is going to sound silly, but like people don't realize that when you're doing multi-AZ RDS, you're literally buying redundant infrastructure. You're at least doubling your cost. Or if you want to do 3 AZs, you're tripling your cost.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the AZ uptime guarantees, it's 4.5 minutes per month is the AZ SLA. And it almost rarely happens that an AZ just drops off the face of the earth. And so you have to, we can't tell you, is it worth it for you to pay at least double, sometimes triple, but we can at least give you a number and anchor that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's look, if an AZ disappears, the chances are that we've probably got other things to worry about. But I don't want to trivialize, people's kind of deployment arrangements. So yeah, by all means, keep multi-AZ in place for production environments. But we see these again. I think I said it at the top. We see these in accounts called QA, test, staging, development. You name it. You do not need multi-AZ for a test database or for a development database. It's almost criminal to be kind of spending money, wasting money like that.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's like to buy the car now, right? Like you wouldn't necessarily buy an extra car, like maybe you have an old, a 25-year-old one that's sitting around for the, when you got to do some errands, but you wouldn't have like a backup copy of a car just in case. Or at least you have to evaluate it in terms of, your risk versus reward, what you're willing to pay for. But we at least want to flag these so that way you can think about it and say, okay, wait, this is QA, this is a preview environment. We don't need to have this running for that one. Okay, our last category is reservations. We have the guidance on purchasing or extending existing reservations.
Yeah, so like EC2 instances, RDS can be paid for in using a number of different savings instruments, and CloudFix recommends a number of different configurations depending on your appetite for the longevity of the current database arrangements, and also the amount of cash that you'd like to give AWS upfront. And as with EC2, the more you pay upfront, the higher, and the longer that you commit for it, the higher your discount will be. I would say now, and there are fantastic discounts to be had. I think over 50% of the highest tier. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. But I would say, please get your house in order first. So look at all the other recommendations first. Do your resizing, do your optimizing before you commit to reservations for instance types that you might not need in 3 years, never mind 1 year.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're going to find other things throughout that process, right? You're going to find some that are like, oh, okay, actually, we can just deprecate this project. So don't buy a 3-year upfront reservation for it. or you may find, you find a lot of other things.
Well, it's just as simple as, hey, the nice people at CloudFix told me that I don't need the 16x. It can be an 8x or a 4x. So let's do that.
Yeah.
So, and that will kind of rearrange the reservation recommendations once that kicks in. So yeah, get all that done first.
That's great advice. It's just how to sequence all of this stuff. All right. Well, that is I believe that is our presentation. Oh, it looks like so this is the CloudFix UI. We show all of the potential completed realized savings. We have a lot of not just RDS, but lots of other types of finder fixers. So please check it out. There's a lot to be left on the table. And I think what's exciting is that it can also, it enables you to do other things. And the great thing is, you're already spending this much on the cloud. And if you can get the exact same performance for this much, then what's left over can be, neat Bedrock experiments, that project you've been always wanting to do but couldn't get budget for. It could be a lot of other things. It kind of can free up these resources. And plus, when you know that your resources are being used well, it can give you confidence to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think we used to use the phrase the kind of Roomba for AWS. It's just constantly looking for stuff. But certainly in the RDS sphere, there are a lot more levers to pull than you might think. And maybe there's a reason that we thought that RDS spends a lot higher than it actually is, that people are starting to use these things and use them wisely.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Please always message us with questions. Thank you, Bill. Really appreciate this one. And we will see you on the next one.
Bye, everyone.